In the first week of February 1982, a small sailboat was crossing the Atlantic Ocean alone at night. 6.5 meters of fiberglass, barely longer than a car, in the middle of 2,000 miles of open water. Just before midnight, something hit it. The hull cracked, the ocean poured in, and the man on board had only minutes to make the decisions that would decide whether anyone would ever see him again. He would not touch land for 76 days. This is the file on Steven Callahan. Callahan was not a reckless man. He was a naval architect, a boat designer from Maine in his late 20s who had spent his whole life studying how vessels survive the sea. The boat he was sailing, the Napoleon Solo, he had designed and built with his own hands. In the autumn of 1981, he sailed it from Newport, across to England, and then south toward the Canary Islands, off the coast of Africa. In late January, he set out on the last great leg, the Atlantic crossing to the Caribbean, alone. It was a route sailors had run for centuries, the same trade winds that carried Columbus. 7 days in, several hundred miles southwest of the Canaries, the weather turned rough. Callahan was asleep when it happened. A crash, loud, violent, like hitting a rock. But there are no rocks in the mid-Atlantic. To this day, he believes it was most likely a whale. Water surged in faster than any pump could fight. The Solo was going down. In the dark, in a breaking sea, Callahan cut loose his emergency raft, a circular rubber platform with an orange canopy, built for 6 people, drifting at the end of a line. But his survival gear was still inside the flooding cabin, so he did something almost unthinkable. He dove back into a sinking boat at night, again and again, pulling out whatever his hands could find: a sleeping bag, flares, a spear gun, some food, navigation charts, and 2 devices called solar stills, machines that turned seawater into drinking water. Those 2 objects would decide everything. By morning, the Napoleon Solo was gone, and Steven Callahan was alone on a rubber raft the size of a kitchen table, 800 miles from the nearest land, drifting west into the empty heart of the Atlantic. He had food for a few days, water for a few more, no radio contact, no one expecting him for weeks. And the currents were carrying him away from every shipping lane on the map. And what those weeks did to a man's mind, you have to understand the size of his world. The raft was less than 2 meters across. He could not stand. He could not walk. Every single thing he owned was within arm's reach, and beyond the thin rubber wall, 4 kilometers of water, straight down. Callahan later described something remarkable about how he stayed sane. His mind split in 2. There was the captain, cold, rational, issuing orders: ration the water, fix the still, catch the fish, take the sight, log the position. And there was the crew, the body in its fear, begging for rest, for water, for mercy. The captain drove the crew without pity. Machines were maintained, rations were enforced, watches were kept. His days took on the rhythm of a job. Exercise, so his legs would still work if land ever came. Navigation, marking pencil lines across a chart of an ocean with no landmarks. Repairs, always repairs. The sea never stopped picking at his equipment. And at sunset, if the day's water had been made and the day's fish had been caught, he allowed himself the one luxury he had: a few sips from his stores, held in the mouth, savored like wine. But there were nights when the captain lost control. The night the 7th ship's lights slid across the horizon and disappeared. That was the closest he came to breaking. He wrote in his log that he was no longer a man in the world of men. He belonged to the sea now, to the fish and the birds. A ghost drifting through shipping lanes that could not see him. And still, every morning, the routine began again. Water, fish, navigation, repairs. Day 30, day 40. The Atlantic kept moving beneath him, mile after invisible mile, carrying him toward a horizon that never changed. Brutal routine. The solar stills produced barely half a liter of water a day. Survival rations, nothing more. When the food ran out, Callahan turned to the one resource he had, the ocean itself. A strange thing happens to a raft adrift in the open sea. It becomes an island. Barnacles grow. Small fish gather beneath it. And then bigger fish come. Dorados, the great golden fish of the Atlantic. They followed him for weeks, swimming in his shadow. He called them his companions. And he hunted them with his spear gun to stay alive, eating them raw, drying strips of their flesh on lines strung across the raft. He caught rainwater when squalls passed. He tracked his position with a sextant improvised from 3 pencils. Ships passed on the horizon. He counted 7 over the weeks. He fired flares at every one of them. Not a single ship saw him. Then, on day 43, the real catastrophe. A Dorado strike punctured the raft's lower tube. Air hissed out. The raft began to sag into the sea. For 4 days, exhausted, starving, covered in saltwater sores, he fought to seal the wound with a patch that would not hold, pumping air day and night while sharks traced circles below him. On the edge of collapse, he finally engineered a fix, a fork of twine and cloth twisted tight around the tear. It held. He had been sure for days that he was already a dead man. He kept working anyway. That, he wrote later, is what survival actually is. Not hope, work. On the 76th day, April 21st, 1982, fishermen off the island of Marie Galante, near Guadeloupe, noticed birds circling something in the water. Birds mean fish. They steered toward them. Under the birds, they found a ragged orange raft, trailing a cloud of Dorados like an escort, and inside it, a man, sunburned, bearded, 1/3 of his body weight gone, who looked up at them and smiled. He had drifted 1,800 nautical miles across an entire ocean in a rubber raft. Steven Callahan survived. He wrote a book about those 76 days, Adrift, that became a bestseller, and years later, filmmakers called him in to help design the ocean scenes for the movie Life of Pi. The Dorados, he always said, were the reason he was found. The fish that punctured his raft were the same fish that led the fishermen to him. The sea took his boat, his supplies, and very nearly his life. It could not take the one thing that mattered. The file on Steven Callahan is closed. One of the few in this archive with a happy ending. If you have a case you want opened, leave it in the comments. And if you want to be here when the next file opens, you know what to do.